Even 3 years into sobriety, I get a little bit anxious about the season ahead.
A lot of those cravings and that anxiety and discomfort seems like it lasts forever, but actually it lasts for about 2 or 3 minutes and then it's gone.
As soon as you shift that mindset into you're not giving up anything, you're gaining things back. And once you can it takes a lot to get your head around that.
It's not easy, and I'm not going to pretend it is. Always have something small so you can slip it in your purse or your pocket.
Yeah, when I was younger, I used to have little bottles of vodka,
Exactly,
on nights out. But it's the opposite. God, we're
Same
smuggling
trick.
in alcohol-free drinks. Hello and welcome to The Upward Spiral, the podcast where personal growth and transformation take center stage, starting with rethinking your relationship with alcohol. I'm your host, Michelle O'Brien, and I'm here to guide you on your journey towards intentional, mindful living that unlocks your true potential. So each week, we are going to be exploring empowering strategies, inspiring stories, and actionable insights to help you thrive in every area of your life. So today, we are going to be diving into a topic that resonates with so many of us: how to navigate the holidays mindfully and without the pressure of alcohol. So we're going to unpack the challenges of sober socializing, discovering festive non-alcoholic options, and learn how to host with inclusivity and self-care at the forefront. By the end of this episode, you'll feel equipped with the practical tools and the fresh perspective of a joyful, balanced holiday season. Whether you're exploring an alcohol-free lifestyle or simply aiming to be more mindful about your choices, then this episode's for you. It's also for anyone who wants to be a supportive host or friend during holiday gatherings. So a few years ago, I took a hard look at my relationship with alcohol, and I realized that moderate drinking honestly was holding me back from fully living up to my full potential. So I decided to explore an alcohol-free lifestyle, and in that I found clarity, resilience, and a renewed sense of purpose. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing what I've learned with you here on The Upward Spiral. So now let's talk about today's incredible guest. He is the mastermind behind The Modern Substitute, a really popular newsletter that curates the best non-alcoholic drinks. He's on a mission to help people find high-quality options that don't require a drop of alcohol. He's also someone who's navigated the journey of sobriety himself and turned it into something empowering and really, really fun. So not only is he an expert in exploring the world of non-alcoholic drinks, he also has an incredibly warm energy and instantly makes you feel welcome. He is also another Brit living abroad, so we've got a lot in common. Laura Silverman from Zero Proof Nation recommended that I speak to Myles. I'm so grateful for the introduction. I think the community that Myles has built is just having such an amazing impact, and I can't wait for him to tell you more about it. Welcome to the Upward Spiral, Myles Faulkner. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it's 6 o'clock in the evening here, I guess, and 9 o'clock in the morning where you are. So we're at different ends of the day, but yeah, happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, no worries, and thank you for coming. And we're recording this on election day.
I wasn't going to mention it, but yes.
So you'll be going to bed soon. When you wake up, the results will be in. We will be watching from Asia, nail biting, and hoping for the best outcome.
I feel like there's that line from Airplane where it's like, oh, this is a bad day to give up drinking, as we're talking.
I know. I'm seeing so many like alcohol-free memes of just saying, to anyone who is not drinking during this election, we salute you. Like, how are you getting through this without a drink?
Yeah, I might have to go for a run after this just to calm down. But yeah, it's definitely been a lot of anxiety. Let's put it that way. But we'll see. Fingers crossed. I'm sure there's lots of different listeners of your podcast, so I will just leave it there.
Yeah. I always, at times like this, I always refer to that clip of Tom Hanks where I can't remember what he was doing. He was in a room with all these other incredible actors, and he just says, "This shall pass." Whatever bad thing is going on, it will pass. Whatever good things are happening in your life, they will pass too.
Yeah.
And I kind of, in a weird way, like I find so much comfort in that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, what will be, and it will pass, and
Yeah.
everything will be okay.
Nothing lasts forever, that's for sure. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see.
So I would just love to kick off by hearing a little bit more about your journey to sobriety and the creation of the modern substitute.
Yeah, it's well, I guess I stopped drinking on January 1st, 2022. 22. I had gone through. I guess when you look at it in sort of, we're 3 years down the line, nearly 3 years down the line now. So if you have the benefit of hindsight, there had been so many signs all the way, for many, many years, probably decades, to be honest with you. I would never really kind of fell into the stereotype of an alcoholic. I still kind of struggle with that word. Because it conjures up imagery that I don't necessarily feel like I fit into, but I definitely was struggling with it, and I think I came from the same culture as you, that warmly embraced drinking to the max, and kind of carried that on as I came over here, and I think it kind of came to a head as it did for many people during COVID, and I realized that. Kind of all bets were off at that stage. There was that first kind of 3, 4, 5 months where it was just like nobody really knew how this was all going to play out. And it just kind of gave me an excuse to carry on drinking again, it wasn't crazy, but it was more than it needed to be. Let's put it that way. And what it was doing was essentially fueling a depression that had been there for longer than I had kind of realized. And so I ended up going to see a therapist, and the one thing, he was super helpful, but the one thing that he really, really helped me with was right at the beginning, he said, well, talk to me about your drinking. And I told him, and he just looked me in the eye and he goes, so do we really need to have a conversation about the drinking and how this is like hurting your depression, or hurting your depression, whichever one it is. And I kind of looked at him and went, yeah, you're right, aren't you? Yeah, exactly. So I kind of made a plan then, although didn't really kind of stick to it. It was coming up to the holidays, and I knew that would be a bad time to quit. And then I kind of let it go a little bit, and then had a mighty bender. I can't remember when it was, but I ended up going on a run the next day, and I'd always used running. I'm not the kind of runner that you are, I might add. I'm a sort of a jogger. So I'm not in the same league. But I went for a long run with a friend, and halfway through that, I just kind of almost doubled over. And literally my body was saying to me, you got to stop it, And so I gave it some thought for the next couple of days. I was going to England. This was October. I drove in the car with my wife, and kind of in tears, to be honest with you, just told her I had to stop, and that I would essentially do that on January 1st. And there was also obviously the questions of like, well, why not do it now if you really want to stop? But I was like, I need to give myself the best possible chance I can. And trying to do that, going back to England, and B, getting through the holidays was just going to be too difficult. So that's and that's kind of what started me on I decided to do sober January,
Dry January.
Sorry, sober October, dry January, and I had never given up for more than 3 or 4 days or a week or something like that. So yeah, got through dry January, and a friend of mine had quit for 14 months, and he went back to it, but he was just doing it to see if he could do it. And so I was like, you know what? I want to do it for 15 months and see if I can achieve that. And it was just getting to a year would have been such a massive achievement, based on the fact that I'd been really drinking since I was 14. Obviously at that younger age, it was just a couple of glasses of wine or a glass of wine with dinner once in a blue moon. But I can honestly say probably from the age of 15, there's no way I would have not had a drink at least once a month, So, so that's kind of how it started. and we're nearly 3 years down the line. So
it's amazing. And it's such a similar story, is that I think everyone has got this picture in their head of a rock bottom, or when you see somebody that is suffering from kind of alcohol use disorder, you go to that stereotypical image in your head of people sitting in a circle in AA, life is in shambles. And I think people think that that's what people go through when they stop drinking,
right.
I had a lot of assumptions, by friends when I started to put out some content in the non-alc space, that all of a sudden people were like, well, we didn't know you were an alcoholic. We didn't know that you had like a problem with alcohol. And it was like, well, I didn't really, I wasn't drinking that much, but removing it made such an incredible difference to my life. That's why I'm talking about it. Because I think we just assume that a little bit or a couple of drinks a week or a couple of nights out a week is fine, but actually it can take a toll.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, without question. No, I mean, in terms of just how much it's helped, the depression that I had it's just immeasurable. I mean, I think if I was to say it was kind of at an 8 out of 10, in terms of how bad it was for a year or two, I'm down to a 1 or a 2 now, which is big difference, huge difference,
Huge.
So,
yeah, amazing. And I think, like me, you got really into non-alcoholic alternatives. So tell me a little bit about that journey.
Right after that, in that dry January, basically, I did need something to substitute it, to replace basically what I was drinking. And I think that was the hardest thing. It wasn't necessarily going out, because I wasn't really going out that much at the time, because I knew if I put myself into a situation where there was a lot of alcohol around, I probably would have succumbed. I mean, I definitely, like in previous dry Januaries, I had tried, and 3 weeks down the line, everybody's out, and you're like, come on, I'll just have one, and then one turns into two, etc. So I needed to find something, and even 3 years ago, there was still quite a lot, but like nothing like there is now. And you mentioned Laura Silverman before. She's obviously way, way, way further back than I was, and there was like 0 for her, apart from a couple of very bad beers. So I was a little bit more lucky. And so I just started trying a few of them. A father of one of my daughter's friends at her school, we were at a party together, and he had brought a bag full of drinks, a bag full of beers, basically NA beers. And so he was helping, giving me or offering them to me. There are just so many good options that are out there, and just so many of these companies that make them are really small. They're bootstrapped. It's a 1-person or a 2-person company. They put all their savings in. They don't have much money for marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very difficult for them to get the word out. And not that I'm necessarily that person, but I can kind of help.
Do you think your sobriety, you would have stuck with it as long as you have, if you hadn't had the non-alcoholic alternatives?
That's a good question. I mean, knowing the old Myles, I would have said no without question. But I think a lot of what I feel that the change in me that happened when I spoke to the therapist, I think that was kind of the first time where I was just like, I've got to take this seriously, for my own healthiness and for my family around me, etc. So I feel like my mindset shifted. And I think that's something that's extraordinarily important when you're doing this. I mean, obviously there's kind of, in this world, there's probably millions of different types of variety of different people. But if I'm just going to go as base as just going, there's people that need to cut it out completely, and there's people that just want to integrate it into their drinking. Those guys, they're perfect. They've got it sorted. You know what I mean? Because they can still enjoy a drink and walk away from it, and and have a couple of non-alcoholic drinks. For me, it wasn't like that. So I think I probably would have been okay, because I was really set on changing my life. But there's a part of me that wonders whether that's true or not. So I think without question, it's what helped me. It's what got me through those first few months. And has led me to be so passionate about helping other people with it. So
I'm very much the same, whereas they were that bridge for me to still remain connected to my friends and my community and my family who all enjoy drinking. It was having that prop or the crutch in my hand. It was being able to enjoy something that looked like alcohol, tasted like alcohol, smelled like alcohol, just without the negative effects. And I think if I hadn't have had them and I hadn't have got so into it in those first 6 months, I think I could have just slipped back into the habit of just continuing going back to drinking. I did a lot of work on my values, who I am, who I want to be. With that, I suppose, came that transformation. And so tell us a little bit about the modern substitute. So for those listeners who maybe haven't heard of it or haven't seen it, we, of course, are going to link to it below. But tell people a little bit about your mission and what to expect from the newsletter.
So it's a weekly newsletter. It's I put it out on Saturday mornings at 7:00 in the morning, West Coast time. It's been really well received, from founders, and I have bottle shops on there, that have subscribed, and lots of people that are just learning about non-alcoholic drinks. And I make it very clear to people that I am not I've never worked for beverage companies. I'm not a drinks expert. I am not an alcohol counselor. I am not anything other than some guy sitting in his kitchen trying out drinks. And it's been fun. It's been nice to sort of get to know a bunch of people in this industry, and it is a fantastically supportive industry. So it's been good.
I love that. I love that, how authentic and just real that is. And I think that's why you've got such a big fan base for it, because it's just some guy trying these drinks, giving kind of really honest recommendations. It works.
Appreciate that. Yeah. And I actually really like the use of the word recommendation, because early on I wanted to kind of cement that I wasn't doing reviews, because I feel like reviews allows you to be negative, and there's already enough negativity in this world. And I don't need to add to that. And the reality is that my taste buds are my taste buds. And, I only write about things that I like. But I also try and have an open mind of like, well, if it's not 100% perfect for me, or I'm getting super excited about it, it probably is for somebody else. So while I don't write about the really rubbish ones, because there are a few out there, I do try and keep an open mind on things, and we may cross that bridge a little bit later about the different types of drinks, etc. But yeah,
I love that. My husband always says, "Oh, you need to be a bit more critical of some of the ones that you recommend on social." But I'm like, no, like if I don't think something's very good, I'm not going to talk about it. But I want to lift the whole industry up, because there are just so many fantastic ones. And also, I'm a positive person,
exactly. Yeah.
I want to bring the positivity to it, even though drama and negativity sells. I'm like, I'm definitely not here for it.
Well, and it's somebody's business, right? So I mean, like, that's the other thing. It goes back to that kind of like, one person, two person, mum and pup type, outfits that they don't need somebody telling them their drink's rubbish. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what I actually wanted to touch on that as well, because some of the most powerful podcast episodes that I've done, and the ones where I've learned something so much from, is the founder stories. So I've been so lucky to speak to a bunch of different founders, Amanda from Naughty, Christina from Altina, Joelle from Drop Bear. I've had one of the guys from Sober Beers on there, an Australian brand, Katie from Clovendo, Ian Blessing from All the Bitters.
Yeah.
Just to kind of name a few, and they've all been incredible. And I love what they're doing. Like they all have really amazing stories and reasons and motivations for getting into this space in the first place. They don't always have a sober story, which I found really interesting. They're not always completely sober, but they have gone out there and they're trying to disrupt, do something different, create these really boutique, beautiful products that are solving a problem and making the world a better place. And they've been some of the most kind of fascinating stories that I've uncovered so far.
I haven't listened to your Ian's episode yet, but he's one of the most amazing people in the industry, and his story, I think, is fascinating, coming from where he came from. And,
Yeah.
what he has produced is just, it's everywhere. I mean, he's such a success story. I mean, I'm sure, obviously, we don't all know the ins and outs and what's going on in the background and the numbers and all that kind of stuff. But to me, he is kind of like, he is the him and his wife, I should add, they're just sort of the, whatever that phrase is, the picture story of all of how great this industry is, and he particularly is so supportive of everybody. He really is.
Yeah, he's wonderful, and I just love that kind of going from being sommeliers to stepping into the alcohol-free industry and leading the way, and entering sobriety together as a couple as well. They've got an incredibly unique story, and we really got into that origin story, I'd probably like to say, on the podcast. So definitely go and have a listen. But you know what? We're here to talk today about facing holiday gatherings sober. It's really difficult. We're heading into the holiday season. We're recording this early November, but this episode's probably going to go out end of November, early December. Even 3 years into sobriety, I get a little bit anxious about the season ahead. How do you feel about it?
It's interesting that you're 3 years. I'd forgotten that, because obviously I am too. So this is my third one. I get less anxious about it, to be honest with you now, primarily because I try and plan as much as I possibly can around the events that I know are coming up. And I also kind of pick and choose what I want to do. Which is to some degree a privilege. And sometimes doesn't go down that well, I might add, with certain people in my family. I think the longer you do this, it's kind of a little bit like a breakup, which, we broke up with alcohol. The easier it gets, So for me, the first one was very difficult. Which is, obviously the reason why I said I didn't even try to give up before Christmas. I waited until January. So I had almost a year's worth of practice before that. And now, I think it's a combination of just making sure that whatever environment you are in, you mentally have the support systems in place to kind of get through it. Whether that be making sure whatever location you go to, has non-alcoholic drinks, or bringing your own, or, a host of different things.
Yeah. The mindset shift is a big one. And I think, I've spoken on the podcast before, is like, I've never been able to complete a dry January before, or like a sober October. And I think it was because I was in the wrong mindset. I was coming at it as like deprivation and depriving myself of something, punishing myself for having an indulgent holiday period. And, I never made it because I felt like I was taking something away. But I think as soon as you shift that mindset into actually you're not giving up anything, you're gaining things back. And once you can it takes a lot to get your head around that, because we've been so brainwashed to think the other way. It's hard, really hard.
You're right. It's like, it's really easy to kind of get into that dry January period, and someone on the 21st goes, hey, we're going out for drinks. We're celebrating someone's birthday. Do you want to come out? And you're there, and you're sipping away at your tonic water or your, seltzer or whatever. And there's nothing fun to drink. And then suddenly you're like, oh, I'll just have one. And then you're done. You're back to where you were.
So you mentioned a couple. What are some of the strategies that we can adopt going into some of the social gatherings at Christmas time or during the holidays?
I think it depends what you're doing. If you are if you're going out with friends, I think there, certainly in the States over here, we have the ability we have like apps and stuff. Buzzcut is a really great app that's out there that basically tells you where non-alcoholic drinks are served in bars and restaurants. So, you can steer things that direction. you don't always get that privilege if you are, you're going to a holiday party or something like that. That gets a little bit more difficult. I have become a big proponent of just bringing my own, which is not necessarily what establishments want to hear, but I kind of feel like if you haven't made the effort to kind of bring these drinks in, especially in an environment where you should know about it by now. You should know that there are a lot of people out there that are abstaining or want to cut down, or for many reasons. Then you should be having them available. So if not, then I just bring my own, and I have a handy case which my daughter bought for me for Christmas a couple of years ago.
I love it.
And I put them in there, and it becomes a great. People ask, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I've got these drinks," and that's kind of where that is. And then I think just around family stuff, it's just they understand, and again, you sort of bring your own stuff, or they provide it.
I think what you touched on earlier as well about the planning is like taking a look at your social calendar for the whole period and think, okay, maybe in my case, am I overcommitting to certain events? Are these the ones that I really, really want to go to? And maybe kind of cherry picking the ones that you really want to go to and gently letting the others know that you're not going to be able to make it. I think preparation is key, like you said earlier. So checking the menus of places before you go. If they haven't got anything suitable, dropping them an email, say, look, you haven't got anything suitable. Can I bring my own? Bringing your own anyway. I love it, Myles. Bold.
Always get something small, though. I've got some drinks here, which we're going to talk about later, but always have something small so you can slip it in your purse or your pocket.
Yeah.
That's the trick. Or the bag if you're...
Yeah, when I was younger, I used to have little bottles of vodka,
exactly,
on nights out. So, but it's the opposite. God, we're
Same
smuggling
trick.
in alcohol-free drinks.
Yeah.
How times have changed, eh?
Absolutely. And I think, honestly, if you're going somewhere kind of a little bit posher, etc., and you just can't, I mean, I have done it. I have brought drinks into kind of quite nice restaurants. I do try to be respectful about it, but at the same time, I do kind of have this. I think the longer I've got into this, the more I'm less patient about it, to be honest with you. But the other trick is, talking of Ian and all the bitter, is a little bottle of bitters. That's kind of like the kind of easy, small, slip it in your pocket and pop it in there. And he's got some amazing flavors. So
yeah, they're incredible. So buying a sparkling water and just popping a couple of drops in, and
and to be honest with you, that's kind of when I say last resort, that's not to take anything away from his bitters, because they're amazing, and and it's really not the only, they're designed for cocktails, obviously. I would much prefer that there is a great cocktail range, and there are beers and this, that, and the other available. But if there isn't, then there are options. Sneaky ones, but there are.
So I did want to talk a little bit about like how to manage people's expectations and how to handle questions and pressure. So maybe you might be with colleagues who don't know your full story. Maybe sobriety might be new for you. Like how do you handle, the people who've had a couple of drinks who are saying, "Oh, go on, just have one, don't be boring," and we've all heard it all before.
Without question, certainly amongst your close friends, when they're getting used to you not drinking, and to be fair to them, they've been used to you being one way, going out and having a few drinks and being whoever you are one way, and then suddenly you're completely different. So it's definitely a change for them as much as it is a change for you. I tend to find, honestly, that people are more interested, and maybe it's my age group as well, because I think what it ends up doing is opening the door for them to go, well, tell me about what you're drinking, or what you're interested in, or the newsletter, or whatever. So I get less of the odd questions now, and I also am not in an environment where a bunch of people are really drunk anyway and trying to force drinks on me, as it were, or or try and persuade me. So I tend to find it's actually a really interesting door opener, to questions about non-alcoholic drinks and and even when it isn't like when going to the England matches, to the pub to watch the England matches during the European Championships this summer, you know, you'll have some of my mates going, "Come on, have a Guinness or whatever," et cetera, et cetera. And to some degree, to a large degree, they've stopped now. But what I do find is like when there's a little bit of a lull, somebody will come over and go, "So you're drinking the Guinness Zero? You like that, do you? Like that works?" And I'm like, "Yeah, try some." And they're like, "Oh my god, this is amazing." And so yeah, I think the question thing is not that much of an issue. And again, maybe it's just because of my age. I'm not sure, but I like it. I don't have much time for the silly questions. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
But
I love that. No patience.
less and less. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm the same, and I think just being more and more direct as I've gone into this journey. Initially, I had a bank of excuses that I would give people, like as if I owed them a reason, or I owed them my life story, or I owe, But actually, I feel like the more excuses you give and the more of your story you tell, and people are like, "Oh, so you used to drink, but you don't now, so maybe I can convince you to have one." Actually, quite quickly, I just say, "Oh no, I don't. No, thanks, I don't drink." People actually accept that a lot more.
Yeah.
And like you, I get a lot of questions now, which I love. Like, people asking like, "What are you drinking? Why not?" "Oh, I'd love to quit, but I don't think I can." And you're right. It's a complete conversation starter, and more people are interested in it.
Totally. It's funny though, isn't it? It's like I didn't come up with this. I heard this on either Reddit or heard it. It may have even been on your podcast, but like nobody asks anybody if when they give up cigarettes, like why they don't go, "Why aren't you smoking anymore?" Like like they never kind of push that. It's so weird. And I would imagine like back in the 70s and 80s, vegetarians were like, "Why aren't you eating meat anymore?" Like it's such an odd thing.
I bet it happened though. I bet there was like a period where people were like, "Why have you stopped smoking?" Or like, "Why have you stopped eating meat?" Like I bet there was. We just can't remember it, or it got kind of a bit lost.
I'm making myself out to be like some kind of party animal, and I really wasn't at all. It's just like I was in that kind of English expat world, and that's kind of what we did.
It was what we did. It's so funny. I always say that people used to ask me like 15 years ago, what's your hobby? And I'd be like, I don't know. I don't have hobbies. Like, what do you do on weekends? I go to the pub to drink.
Yeah.
The activity was drinking. It's like, we're going to go and have a session because we're going to go drink. What encouragement could you give to anybody who might be feeling a little bit anxious about entering this holiday season sober?
It's not easy, and I'm not going to pretend it is. But if you, going back to that whole planning thing, if you put those things in place, it will become easier and easier and easier. To the point where, as when you asked that question earlier on, and I basically answered like, well, in year 3, I don't really think about it that much anymore. And I'm not, everybody's different. So how they handle, this time of the year and being put in situations that they handled differently in the past with alcohol, it will get better. It'll get easier. A lot of those cravings and that anxiety and discomfort seems like it lasts forever, but actually it lasts for about 2 or 3 minutes and then it's gone. Maybe 10 minutes, which is a long time when you're feeling it. But, if you can just get past that and get into conversation and stop thinking about it, it really helps. But the last thing I was going to say was like, you're in charge of when you leave. So, I've found that, this is not necessarily a topic around the festive period, but like if I am going out to the pub with my mates, I'll stay for 90 minutes and then I'm out. Because after that 90 minutes or 120 minutes, 2 hours or whatever, things are going to get, there'll be a few more pints flowing and I don't, it just gets kind of a little bit annoying, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're in charge of when you leave.
I think one thing we didn't touch on in the planning is how amazing the holiday season is for alcohol-free activities. And what I have already done is started planning in my calendar is like I have booked wreath making. So I'm going to go to this incredible florist and make a wreath for my front door. I've just booked a Christmas afternoon tea because like my mother-in-law's coming. So we're going to do like
Brilliant.
with the kids, and it's got, Santa's afternoon tea. We'll go to kind of Winter Wonderland to see the lights, and we'll go and do some, they've got a kind of snow pop up here. Obviously it's Singapore, so it's going to be 35 degrees and that's Celsius. So it's going to be super hot, but my kids have never seen snow. So they've kind of got a big indoor kind of snow thing. And then so I've kind of this year and the last couple of years just really been on the hunt for those really fun, wholesome Christmas activities. Even things like gingerbread house making. Like I would have done that before, but I'd have done it with a bottle of mulled wine,
Right. Yeah.
But there's so much that you can do that is so wholesome and so fun that just doesn't involve alcohol at this time of year.
Well, and and when it did, you woke up the next day and maybe you didn't remember all of it, or it was, or you were grumpy about it, or that's one of the things that I think in terms of just the festive period. It's like you wake up on Christmas morning and you're awake and excited and, enjoying the time with your family with a clear head, and, after, on New Year's Day, you wake up and you essentially start the year, because you literally are starting the year with a clear head, and not fuzzy and hungover and staying in bed till 1 o'clock in the afternoon, etc. And, no judgment. There's nothing wrong with doing that if that's what you want to do. It's just, for me, those days have gone.
For sure. And I think, look, you've only got a certain number of Christmases when your kids are young and you're going to get to do this and they want to actually spend time with you. And yeah, you want to be present for them, right?
For sure. 100%. 100%. Yeah.
So let's get into the festive non-alcoholic alternatives. So being an absolute expert in this space, what are your top festive non-alcoholic drinks picks for the holidays?
I'm a big believer that dark drinks are for the dark months. So you're not going to get any summery drinks here. This is going to be the kind of warmer, cozier type drinks. So in terms of spirits, I've got 3 Amano type drinks. Dr. 00, which I absolutely love. I just actually opened this and did a recommendation on this last week in the newsletter, and had some fun cocktails this week. So enjoyed that. Tennyson out of Texas. That is a fantastic Amano-like drink as well. And one that I know everybody talks about every time you ask this question, but Pathfinder. They were probably the 3rd or 4th drink that I bought. I am never without this particular spirit. It is fantastic and can be put in cocktails and drunk neat. All of those 3 actually can be. What I like about those 3 is you've got Pathfinder, which is kind of a little bit sweeter. You've got Dr. 00, which is a little bit more of a bitter Amaro, sorry. And Tennyson, which is a little bit more on the spicy, got a bit of a kick, a little bit more ginger into it. So those 3 are fantastic. And I'm going to say that as the things that I'm recommending here, there are so many. I could bore you for about 3 hours, but I just picked a few just so I had something to show you. A couple of what I would call more traditional drinks, because I would put that in sort of the non-traditional categories. Spiritless, Kentucky 74 is kind of a bourbon type spirit, and rum alternative. Both of those make a fantastic old fashioned, which is really worth exploring. Neither of those two, and most sort of traditional, what I'd call replications of traditional spirits like whiskey, gin, etc., etc. Most of those drinks you are not going to be able to sip neat. They aren't designed to be sip neat. They're designed to be put in a cocktail.
Yeah.
So, sorry, excuse me.
Just coming on to the kind of the not to be drunk neat, because I think at the beginning I started to experiment to try and make Cosmos and Negronis and everything. For me, it can't be done, or at least, not well, because you're missing the fire.
Yeah.
You're missing the burn that you get and people like with those drinks.
Yeah, I think it was one of the founders from Tilden said, the thing about spirits that make the difference is the interrupter, the thing that interrupts as you're drinking it. It's the thing that stops you taste wise, and makes you go, oh, okay, all right, this is something special. And it is, we're essentially, Seedlip apart and maybe a couple of other drinks, we're essentially 3 or 4 years into making non-alcoholic spirits. I was looking up when I can't remember what it was. It was some whiskey that essentially was created in 1667 or something. And I'm like, well, good God, that's like 400 odd years versus 4. So what I really am excited about is, like, in 4 more years and 10 more years, etc., we're going to have some phenomenal options out there. But even right now, there's some really good ones. So that's the spirits. Beer wise, this time of year for me, it's got to be stouts and porters and drinks like that. So I've got 3 here outside of Guinness, which I do love. This is Alesmith. These guys are out of San Diego. This is their Speedway non-alcoholic version of a very, very popular alcoholic stout that they have. This is amazing because it looks like a can of oil a little bit.
Yeah.
It pours literally like a can of oil. When you pour it into the glass, it looks like you are pouring oil. It is bizarre. Amazing. And it tastes amazing. The next one I've got is from Untitled Art out of Wisconsin. This is a chocolate dark brew. So you've got a real chocolatey flavor in there, a little bit of coffee. And yeah, it's a good one for kind of warming yourself up at this time of year. And then closer to home for me, out of Bend, Oregon, this is the Shoots Brewery, and this Black Butte porter, which the alcoholic version has been around for a couple of decades at least, I think, is one of the most biggest selling porters or dark beers, should I say, even in the States. This non-alc version is about 99% perfect version of the original. It is fantastic.
I love
Brilliant.
when you get a great copy,
Yeah.
I always say that about the Guinness, because the Guinness is just so good. And I was a Guinness drinker, but Guinness in Ireland and the UK tastes very different from Guinness in Asia. Mm-hmm. And the alcohol-free Guinness is actually better than the Guinness you can get in Asia.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you heard about Diageo, I think it wasn't even Diageo, actually. I think it's Guinness itself have put another 20, I think I might be getting the numbers wrong here, so forgive me if I am, but like another 25 million pounds, maybe dollars, not sure, into production of Guinness Zero because it's exploded so much. I think they were, again, I'm going to get these numbers wrong, but it was something like they expected it to be 3 or 4% of their production, and it's now at 15%, which is insane. Yeah, it's really, really cool. And I think so many people, especially even just amongst my friends, they're really kind of like, I'm going to have this as kind of, that zebra drinking type thing where I'll have one with alcohol and one without alcohol. And they barely notice the difference. It's fantastic. Yeah. All right. We're halfway through on that. Wines. Okay. So I am very honest about the fact that I am not a big wine drinker. I do like wines, but I feel like out of all of these drinks, it's probably the thing that I know the least about, although I am learning. One of the things that I have found is that the really wine is getting a lot better. It's definitely had a really hard time in the NA category, and certainly it is not had as many fans as maybe some of the other categories, but that is changing quite rapidly. Definitely, there's a lot of wine companies coming out of Europe that are really making some headway. So in terms of some recommendations, I would look at offerings from Oddbird, Naughty, Ocean Zero out of California, Sovi out of California, and Geronimo, which is kind of just come onto the scene in this last year. They're out of Austria. All 5 of those are interesting, and there's loads more, but again, I have to kind of keep this to an hour or whatever we're doing.
It's interesting that you picked up an Austrian one then, because I haven't heard of those yet. But the Zero is a new one out of Austria as well, and it is brilliant.
Really?
Really,
Okay.
really good. Yeah, I'll link to it below, but it's a fantastic one as well. So Austria, bit of a dark horse, I think.
Yeah,
Coming
absolutely.
out of nowhere for
Who
alcohol-free
knew?
wines.
And then on the wine alternative side of things, which there's some really interesting stuff out there too. There's Muri from Denmark, who have a whole range of different options. Non out of Australia, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, big one.
They've got some fantastic stuff too. And then Proxies over here in the States, they too all 3 of them kind of have similar type of offerings out there that can easily substitute. And I think there again, you're kind of going into another mindset thing. If you're going in there thinking it is going to be like the cab that you usually like, or the Syrah or whatever, they're not quite there yet in a lot of cases. Sometimes they are, especially with those other 5 that I mentioned. But with the wine alternatives, I actually kind of much the same as the non-traditional spirits. I kind of find that a little bit more interesting to me because they're using such interesting ingredients, botanicals, bark, all kinds of like mad things that you'd never think about putting into a drink, and it's coming out fantastic. Really, really interesting. So. And then lastly, and I'm having to look at a few notes here because there's so many drinks, I can't keep all of these in my mind. But in terms of the ready to drink options, which, again, are really fantastic for you to take to these festive occasions. De Soy have just put out, that's Katy Perry's drink line. They've just put out a St. Moritz Mule, which I've yet to try yet. So I can't honestly say whether it's any good or not, but it does sound really interesting because it's like a Moscow Mule, but it has pomegranate, cranberry, and rosemary added to it, which sounds pretty good to me. Yeah. You've got Little Saints out of Florida. They do a lot of mushroom drinks, which are really interesting. I have one here, which is their old fashioned that they put out during, I think, the spring. They now have a spiced old fashioned, which sounds amazing. I have yet to try that as well, but based on this one, I think it'll be a winner. On the Negroni front, Lapos came out earlier this year. I think it was in January. They're excellent, really, really good. They're only putting out that one drink so far, so well worth checking out. On the Negroni side of things, also Saint Agrestis out of New York or out of Brooklyn. They have the Phony Negroni and a whole line of Phony Negronis with coffee and mezcal and this, that, and the other. They're definitely one to check out. And then one slightly more, probably less well known, is a company out of North Carolina called RSRV. They have a line of 4 different drinks that are really intriguing. They have one called Rosata, which is a mix of sweet and sour cherries with ginger. And that's a sipper. It's very nice. So hopefully there's something in there that people can pick up on. Don't know if you could link those drinks as well. It might be a long.
I was about to say, I'm going to get you to send me a list of all of those because I want to link to them all below. And there are so many actually that I haven't heard of. quite a lot out of the US as well, which is really exciting. I get exposed to a lot of the ones out of Australia being here, but I'm really excited to see if I can get my hands on some of those,
Do
especially.
you have a couple that you would recommend from your end of the world?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So actually, Altina, based in Australia, a lovely Christina and Alan. So they have their wines, and then they add native botanicals into their
Mm,
wines. They have a Sanskria, which is just beautiful. It's wine with more. I just feel like it's really elevated it. And that's beautiful. Another one out of Australia, Cloven Dough. So Katie, she
huh.
creates these absolutely beautiful botanicals. But she's got one that's kind of a lavender-based one that's beautiful. She's got one that's almost got like Indian spices and is quite kind of
Ooh,
clovey and
yeah.
really beautiful. And then she's got another one that's more like Thai kind of inspired, and it's got like your lemongrass, and it's like quite fresh. But we mixed the lavender one with a company called Mr. Consistent. And so Mr. Consistent, another amazing Australian brand, they have about 20 different SKUs, and it's cocktail mixes. They produce
Oh,
cocktail
okay.
mixes, and they're ready to drink cocktail mixes, and they're great, and they're for alcohol and non-alcohol, and they'll have your espresso martini mix, and you put whatever in it and shake it, and it's good. They're
Yeah.
great on their own, and they're great with non-alcoholic spirits. But I think we mixed the lychee martini, Mr. Consistent, with the lavender based cloven dough. And you just had something that felt like we were getting it in a, 5-star hotel or like a really beautiful restaurant. And it was just so simple and easy to make at home. So I think it's
Brilliant.
it's finding those combinations as
Yeah.
well, because I think there's a lot of really interesting things happening in the mixer space as well. And kind of marrying up the two, you can come up with something that tastes extremely sophisticated and is not at all complicated.
That's really fun. One of the things I really love doing, which it's slightly different to you because you're kind of experimenting a little bit more. But one of the things I love to do when I pick up a bottle of spirits is like I always go and try and make 2 or 3 of the drinks off the web, the recipe collection on their website. And as you say, sometimes you make one and you're like, oh my God, this should be in a 5-star restaurant. This is fantastic. Like you'd happily spend $15 or $20 on that in a restaurant because it's just fantastic. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
like when I first started like in this space, then I was creating loads of little videos around kind of me trying to make cocktails and make cocktails that exist, already exist. Okay, what's the non-alcoholic version of a daiquiri or a mojito or whatever? But actually, the things that are really special are the things that are using non-alcoholic spirits that aren't trying to mimic anything
Mm,
else, that are trying to be, these beautiful botanicals and these complicated, complex alternatives on their own, and then trying something new with them rather than trying to mimic something that already exists and it not
yeah.
quite getting there.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be really interesting to see. I think, I'm really glad those companies are around. Especially the ones that put out really, like the Kentucky 74 and the Ritual Rum Alternative, and there are a handful of others. Like Monday Gin, I think, is a really good one as well. I'm really glad they're around, but I do wonder. Um, I don't think there's a lot of space for more of those type of companies. I think once 1 or 2 or 3 of those companies have kind of nailed it, that's probably all there needs to be. Because really, what I think and what I hope for with this industry is that it does go that non-traditional direction where you are creating things that have never been had before. And they're just super into. I mean, to be honest with you, that's where I get really excited. I'm less interested in replicating in a gin and tonic, and when you get to things like go home and you get like, go to Tesco's or whatever, and there's a gin and tonic in a can, and it's like this is basically a juniper flavored can of tonic water. It's like, it
Yeah.
it doesn't really do it for me.
For lack of better words, like we deserve to be able to drink something that's like unique and sophisticated, and it's not just people who aren't drinking the alcohol. It's everybody, you know.
Yeah.
I think there's this almost kind of like revolution or evolution happening, of consumers demanding more and something that's different and something that's more sophisticated, that's maybe better for you, that isn't loaded with sugar,
Right.
and innovation. You know, that there's a lot happening. It's just a really exciting time.
It is, and I think, you know, we're in this whirlwind of growth right now, where, you know, it's fantastic that you've got companies like Diageo that are really taking this seriously, you know, and putting money into some of those bigger name companies, and all the way down to the other end where you've got someone in their kitchen or the garage or whatever trying to come up with this concoction. And it will be fascinating to see where it all plays out in the next 5 to 10 years, because it will change dramatically. And I think, you know, there will be bars and restaurants will change with it. They'll have to. Yeah, it's a really exciting time. It really is. It's lovely to be, you know, for both of us, really. It's lovely to be here watching this happen at what is kind of the beginning. I know it's 2.0 really, you know, 2.0 in terms of, you know, people that were around, you know, with Seedlip and Partake Brewing and all those companies that were really the forefathers and mothers of this industry. But the real kind of injection of interest is now, and has been the last 2 or 3 years, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
It is exciting to see where it goes and to see the impact that it can have on people's lives. Like, I genuinely was not prepared for how much my life was going to change.
Yeah.
And so much of it is because this industry allowed me to still retain those connections that were so important to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Just on one last question, because we've chatted so long, but I just have one more question, and that's for anybody who's listening who is hosting this holiday season and this Christmas. How as hosts can we be more inclusive, more aware and kind of respectful for the guests that we're inviting around?
I think in terms of just presenting, or providing, should I say, a lovely, wonderful experience these holidays. I think there's sort of three ways to look at three ways, or three situations somebody might be in. You might have a little bit of knowledge about, you know, NA drinks, in which case, you know, put yourself in the position of the people that are coming and find out, you know, or you know, provide them some options that you know that they're going to be excited about, you know, and don't provide one, you know, provide like 2 or 3 options. Maybe go all out and do 4 or 5, you know, cover the different categories that we were talking about earlier, because really nobody, you know, if you put yourself into you know, anybody's shoes that goes to a bar or a restaurant or goes to a dinner party or whatever, if you have one drink, you're basically relying on all of the people in there to like one drink. And the reality is we don't. Like, somebody might want a glass of, you know, a cocktail made with Pathfinder, or someone might want a little Saints can, you know, they might want a beer, you know. And I realize that there's budgets and, you know, not everyone can provide a whole range of drinks or whatever, but as much as you possibly can. If you don't know anything about it, try and find somewhere that does.
The modern
you know,
substitute.
But well, yeah, you can ask me, email me if you want to, although you have to sign up for the newsletter, get my email address. Or go to you know, if you have somewhere close, and not everybody does, but if you have somewhere close that, you know, like that is a non-alcoholic bottle shop, you know, or stocks a pretty decent range, go and ask people that work there, because a lot of them are pretty passionate about it and a lot of them know about it, and they'll you know, point you in the right direction. And then lastly, if you're really unsure, and you don't want to put your foot in it and provide something that they might not be having, just ask the people that are coming. Because honestly, I really appreciate, I mean, you're going to be, as someone like myself or yourself, you're going to be stoked that somebody's made the effort and thought about you and tried to include you in the festivities. If you, you know, if you aren't sure, people would rather go, you know what, I would love this, and this, but you know what, don't worry about it. I've got like a whole stock of them here. I'll just bring some myself, but thank you for asking, you know, and that way you kind of, you get out of actually having to buy them. but I'm joking. But like there are lots of different ways, and I think honestly, it's really down to sort of communication and just really thinking about it. Just thinking about what you can provide people.
I think if you don't know as well, like I think there'll be a lot of people who maybe don't want to drink on that occasion or don't want to drink for every single occasion. So if you can provide non-alcoholic alternatives and offer them to people who do drink as well, I think is good. And I think if you're a host, just texting everybody beforehand to say, okay, I'm going to be providing some wines, beers, a festive cocktail and a festive mocktail, for example.
Right.
If you want to drink something different, please feel free to bring a bottle,
Exactly.
so that kind of lets people know that you are giving them a choice to drink or not to drink. Because I think sometimes these events and the holidays, people feel that they have to. People feel like they don't have a choice. And in order to be a good guest, they should drink and eat and do everything.
Yeah.
And so, I think letting people know up front that they've got a choice is a really good start as well.
Absolutely. And one last thing on that, I think, if you're an event planner that's listening to this, and obviously we were talking about, if you're at home and you're providing for guests that are coming around, if you're an event planner, believe me, there are a lot of people within the organization that you're creating an event for that drink non-alcoholic drinks or would like at least the option of doing so, whether they are like me, not drinking, or or they have a medical issue, or they want to just drive home safely, etc., etc. Don't provide them with like some fizzy drink. Get them some nice stuff because you will find that it will be drunk. I guarantee it.
More, I'm seeing more now than ever. The non-alcoholic drinks running out before the alcoholic ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Just give people a choice. Don't make a big deal of it. They're there, and just watch, because I think you'd be surprised about how many people choose.
And make sure people know about it. Have a sign that says that those drinks are available, because if they're stuck under the bar, they're never going to know. So, sorry, I'm getting on my high horse now. I better stop.
No, I love it. I love it. I still think you need to do the bottle shop and then.
Oh, maybe we'll see.
I'm speaking to Chris Marshall of Sands Bar next week, which I'm really excited about to get his take on hospitality, and particularly during the holiday season as well. Because talking about getting on your high horse, I'm a real kind of advocate for educating hospitality and getting them to understand that this is what people are looking for. Don't assume that you're not going to sell it, and make it a priority. And I think a lot of them will be surprised.
Yeah. Excellent.
Myles, I love talking to you. Thank you so much. I feel like we could have just kept going for another hour and a half.
I know, it's funny because I looked at a quick look at the clock and I was like, oh God, she's going to be like, God, he never shuts up.
No, not at all. Honestly, it's been fantastic, and I'm so excited by all of your recommendations. I'm going to email you straight away to say, can you get me that list? Because
after the election, I'll Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I love your podcast. I love what you're doing, and I think the guests that you have on are just really, really brilliant. So keep it up.
Thank you so much, Myles. Really, thank you for sharing so many valuable insights on how to navigate the holidays with confidence and mindfulness and celebration. I've loved hearing about your journey and all of your expertise with the modern substitute. I will link to absolutely everything below, including all of those incredible drinks that you have recommended. I personally can't wait to get my hands on some and try them this holidays. To the listeners, if you're still listening, thank you very much for your time. And I think just remember that staying alcohol free, or even just being mindful about your drinking, is about honoring your values and taking care of yourself. So try not to take too much notice of the pressure that can come at this time of year. Have a plan. Find your amazing festive non-alcoholic options. Set clear boundaries, and I think you can reframe some of these traditions and have a really joyful and intentional season. If you like this episode, please take a moment to subscribe or share it with a friend, or leave us a review. It really helps. And please don't forget to check out the Modern Substitute. It's such a great newsletter. I cannot recommend it enough. And very supportive for the community. Thanks again, Myles.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so much. And to everyone listening, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.